This year, one of our gardens consists of a giant vegetable garden. That's right, a garden where we're going to try our hand at growing record-setting vegetables. Now on this side of the garden we have a mixture of the giant kohlrabi. We also have on the same bed some of the Hercules cabbage. Then we have super dome broccoli. And we've just planted some of our king-size squash or marrow squash. And then of course we couldn't have a giant garden without some big tomatoes, and we have varieties Magnum and Giant Belgium. We've also already planted our pumpkins, which are the Atlantic giant pumpkin, and then we have giant corn along with some of our walking stick kale that we've put in. Now the key to starting a giant garden is you've got to plant early, and we've done that by several methods. Even with the wet, cold spring we've had, we've been pretty successful in getting an early jump on them. With our tomatoes again, and you'll notice even in the cabbage and most everything except the corn, we've used the black plastic. We get better drainage that way, and we also heat the soil temperatures up a little bit. Now we've had a couple of nights that we've had some threatening freezing weather, and where we didn't have some of the other protective coverings, we just used black pots that we put upside down, and on these windy nights we just set a brick on top of them. They still have air holes, but we kept the frost from landing on the tomatoes. Now if it got really cold, that may not work, but around freezing we've been very successful in keeping them from freezing on us. Now of course in the next bed over here we have the wall of water. We talked about those a little bit earlier in the season. And remember I told you that if you don't put Clorox in it, when it starts warming up, you'll get algae growth. And we're starting to get that in a few of ours that we didn't put the Clorox solution in. Now a few nights even, we had temperatures drop that we were a little bit leery on leaving these open, because remember there's an open hole here. And the more water you put in, the more they'll stand open. And so what we would do is squeeze some of the water out and then just use a gallon or 2-gallon pot and put right over the top with a little cap, and that gave them a little bit extra protection. Then the next morning when it started warming up, we just take those off. So that's one way we got a little bit of an early start. Of course, we've talked about the greenhouse umbrella. We used it to cover up our pumpkins here along with our other cold frame. And then on our corn, we really tried to get an early start on the corn. We did several things. We purchased a heating cable that we ran an extension cord to. We dug a trench about 12 inches deep and ran the cable along the trench towards the base, covered it up a little bit, and then back here you'll notice we thought we were going to be really innovative this year with our corn, get it started early because it was a giant variety. So we thought because of the big foliage we would use some masking tape, and we put a seed at our correct spacing, and we placed the seed in the direction where the seed was actually pointed down, put the masking tape close to the heating cable, covered it up with compost, and then as the corn grew we were going to fill in the soil to kind of make it more stable as it grew so it wouldn't blow over. Well, after about 7 to 10 days we noticed the temperatures were warm enough because we had a soil thermometer. The soil temperatures were up around 80–85 degrees. But when we came out to check and water them, nothing was happening. So we started digging around, and sure enough, one more time, we're not going to have any corn at Oklahoma Gardening. This time, either mice, field mice, or rats or something got under the cold frame and cleaned out every one of our seeds right off the masking tape. So as you can see, all we have is a masking tape left and no corn. And now it's a little bit too late for us to try to get it started for our giant contest. Now it seems like giant veggie gardening is very popular this year. All kinds of gardening contests are going on all over the United States with various companies, and so we thought we'd have a little bit of fun here in Oklahoma Gardening and also have a giant tomato contest. Now some of the guidelines are the giant tomato contest is designed only for home gardeners. Commercial growers are ineligible. The tomato must be grown by the individual submitting the entry, and we don't want any tampering of the tomato fruit or any alterations in the tomatoes entered in the contest. The tomato must be officially weighed in pounds and ounces at one of the 77 Oklahoma County Extension offices using their postage scales, and they need to be verified by the County Extension Director or Ag Agent. Or you can take your tomato into Southwood Landscape and Nursery in Tulsa at 91st and Lewis, and they're our official sponsor for the contest, and they can also verify the weight of your tomato. Now, in addition to weighing the tomato, you need to send in 2 colored photos. One photo of the tomato on the plant as far as a close-up, and then one of the entire plant with the tomato on it. So that's 2 colored photos. And if you fail to adhere to any of these guidelines, that's grounds for disqualification on the tomato contest. Now, the entries can be submitted anytime between May 1st and September 17th, and the winning entry will be highlighted on Oklahoma Gardening, and you'll receive a $200 gift certificate from Southwood Landscape and Nursery. So again, we'll be bringing you lots of information, but you may want to know some other pointers to get started. Now, in addition to starting early, you've got to have the right variety, and there's a listing of tomato varieties that are known to grow big tomatoes. Those are Magnum and Giant Belgium, again the ones we have here in our gardens, Burpee's Delicious, Park's Whopper, German Johnson, Carmelo, Big Boy, Big Girl, Beef Master, Big Rainbow, Tappy's Finest, and Old Flame. And even though you may not have started earlier, if your garden center is growing some of these transplants, you've still got plenty of time to get them growing. And remember to give them lots of attention, especially consistent moisture throughout the dry part of the summer, adequate fertilizer without over-fertilizing or you'll get off foliage and no fruit. And of course, you've got to be active in the garden like we always talked about and scouting for those pests. Now, we also have a giant pumpkin contest planned later in the season, but we'll tell you about that later on in many of the upcoming shows. So be sure and get those giant tomatoes and pumpkins and other crops growing, and we'll show you how ours are coming along throughout the season.